Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing KamrulHasanMilton in a, I believe, 10 plus 5 game on chess.com. It's a climbing the rating ladder video. Alright, my opponent opens with e4. Let's play a Sicilian today. I'm feeling a little spicy. It's late in the evening. It's approaching midnight, actually. But, don't have any caffeine, but I have some tea I'm working with, some herbal tea. It's been a long week, but I've enjoyed it. I've been streaming, making videos a lot lately. It's been great. Okay, knight f3. Let's play d6. I'll probably go for a classical Sicilian. So knight takes d4, knight f6, and then if knight c3, knight c6. I like this line. The Najdorf has a slightly better theoretical reputation, but honestly, if something's called classical in chess, you know it's going to serve you well for a long time. So it's a fundamental line. Quick development. White plays bishop e3. Now, in a lot of systems, bishop e3 is a completely fine move to play. Here, there is a question as to whether I can try knight g4. It's an interesting move. I can also play e5 here and go for a center where I have the pawns on e5 and d6. Slight weakness on d5, but the benefit is I get to clarify white's intentions with that knight on d4 right away. So, debating between those options, I could also play e6 and play with this Scheveningen center. The pawns right next to each other. Let's play knight g4, though, and see how my opponent reacts, because this is the most challenging move here. Trying to hit that bishop before it gets too comfortable. Okay, and white takes on c6. Let's take back. Unless I want to play knight takes e3, I should mention that this is a possibility. But then there's knight takes d8, knight takes d1. And at minimum at that point, white can play rook takes d1. I would take on d8. That's an even exchange after all that, but I've had to move my king, so I prefer just to take towards the center. And for black in a Sicilian, it's typically a slight victory to have made this exchange, to have induced your opponent to capture your knight on c6, so you can take back with the b pawn towards the center. Black tends to have a nice central pawn mass that way. So I'm threatening knight takes e3. Again, the knight is held by the bishop. And when white retreats, this pawn on f2 becomes more vulnerable as well. So I'm immediately looking at queen b6 here, targeting that pawn. I don't see a lot of downside to it. I think it's going to force white to play something awkward like queen e2 or queen d2, blocking one of the bishops. Maybe white will play queen f3. That's probably fine for me. I can play, for instance, g6 after that, and maybe look to fianchetto. So, yeah, I like the look of queen b6 here. I'm going to play it. I feel pretty good about this position, so I'm not going to dwell on this move. This is a bit longer compared to other climbing the rating ladder games that I've played, by the way. I've often played 5 plus 5, but we'll see if the 10-minute base time control instead of the 5-minute makes a bit of a difference in terms of the quality. And just as a reminder for all you improving players out there, I know many of you guys are actively working on your game. I do recommend even games longer than this. 15 plus 10 at a minimum is typically great. Anything longer than that is a bonus. So, okay, queen f3. So white defends f2, and I was mentioning g6. I like this to try to get fianchettoed. If h3, I can play knight e5. Attacking the queen looks pretty good. Yeah, not too many other moves I would consider here, so let's go ahead and play it. If white plays bishop c4, trying to develop and hit the pawn on f7, then I would have knight e5 again. That would hit the queen and the bishop here. So white does play h3. All right, knight e5 it is. And I'm looking to fianchetto on the next move. Okay, queen e3. I think here I'm going to let white take me so I can recapture again towards the center and connect all my pawns together. So bishop g7. Pre-move this capture. Side note, one thing I don't like about chess.com is that when you pre-move, it puts the piece, assuming it's a capture, on top of the other piece. So it looks like I'm playing without a queen here. Whereas on Lee chess, it draws a little arrow. I like that better. But we do get the trade. So notice how I have one uninterrupted pawn chain, a long pawn chain here, no isolated pawns. White has 2 pawn islands by contrast, so that should be a bit of an advantage for me in terms of the structure. Yeah, f4, I'll go back to d7. Only safe square for the knight, but it's fine. Even though we're blocking the bishop, I'm still pretty pleased with this position. I think I'll send the knight to c5 after this. Notice how white pushing f4 makes e4 noticeably weaker because white can't play the pawn backwards. Can't go f3 anymore and defend that pawn. So, all right, bishop e3. And if I play knight c5, white is very likely going to play bishop d3. So, just anticipating that continuation right now. Ooh, yeah, tempting stuff. I can play maybe b5, look to play b4. Certainly there's bishop a6 as well. Knight c5, bishop d3, bishop a6. White can play king e2 at that point. Okay, but then I castle. Let's go knight c5. Let's play this quickly and make white think about what they're going to do, but I think that's the tentative plan. This is some peppermint tea. When I was at the store a couple weeks ago, I just bought like every single flavor of tea that they had. So I've got honey chamomile, I've got plain old green tea, of course, this peppermint stuff, Earl Grey, you name it, I probably have it. Okay, bishop d3 is played. Yeah, and my light square bishop, by contrast, is not doing much. White's bishop is not great either. It's just wedged in between these 2 pawns. But I'm going to play bishop a6 to put further pressure. I think there's a very good chance white's going to play king e2. And what I want to try to set up here, guys, is bishop takes c3, followed by knight takes e4. And it won't work yet if white plays king e2, because my rook on h8 will be hanging. So I probably need to castle first. King e2, castle short, and see if white responds to that threat in some way. They might have to play something awkward like king e3, which further blocks in this dark square bishop. Okay, white surprises me and takes. Any reason I should avoid taking with a rook? I don't think so. Let's go for it. Okay, and white castles. So again, if I take here and then take e4, I would lose the rook in the corner. So it stands to reason that castling is just good in this position. Constructive. b5 is another move I'm looking at, but I'd feel a lot more confident playing it after I'm castled, just to connect my rooks. I wonder if, let's say I castle and white plays rook e1 to overprotect e4. I wonder if I should throw in bishop d4 check at that point. I think I probably should. Bishop d4 check and then maybe b5. Let's castle. That's the plan, though. And by the way, this gives me a good chance to mention that, do you notice how a lot of these plans I'm making are quite short term? They're in the 2 to 4 move range. That's the sweet spot that you guys want to operate in most of your games. So I'm an international master. Even me, I'm not trying to forecast more than, yeah, like 4 moves. A move being 1 move for white, 1 move for black. 4 moves would be, you know, towards the outer limits, unless the position's very forcing. I'm most of the time trying to make these solid as possible short-term judgments and trust my instincts. Okay, so white does play rook e1, and because e5 would shut in my dark square bishop, that's why I want to play this bishop d4 check move, I think. If bishop e3, I'm taking c3, so it just seems like a constructive move. Unless I want to go b5 right away, but knight e6 is another move too. Catches my eye. Check seems best, though. Yeah, let's do it. Check. I would expect king h2 here. I don't think white wants to step towards the center, king f1. If I ever can pick up this pawn, then like g3 becomes vulnerable as a mate square. Okay, white plays king h1. Similar to king h2, but yeah, it leaves a couple more squares vulnerable. Well, the g3 square in particular vulnerable. All right, so now b5 makes a great deal of sense in my mind because I'd be threatening b4, going after this b2 pawn, trying to kick the knight away from e4. I could also maybe think about taking and then knight a4 at some stage soon, but it seems premature. So I think some combo of b5 and bringing a rook over is just the natural thing to do here. Yeah, let's play b5 to begin with. If a3, I think I'll double and threaten b4. But white can move the rook away. Okay. Maybe white moving this rook somewhere like d1 will ultimately be all right for them. But they have to play a3 first, I believe. So let's see if white plays that. In any case, I'm happy to play b4. Looks like a constructive move. Gains a little space. I'm seeing an interesting angle here that I wasn't seeing before. And that actually means my last move might be an inaccuracy. I had a capture and then rook a4. And that pawn might have been a goner. Might have had to play e5, and I could take f4 at that point. Okay. I didn't appreciate that. White might get some compensation there because of their bishop and my dark squares, but something to look at in analysis. Now, if a3 and I try to do that, rook a4, white will have bishop b4, so it's a little bit different. So if a4 is played, what direction do I want to take this? Maybe even knight a4? Really brainstorming here. There's a lot of tempting possibilities, but you can only play one move. Knight a4. I'm less optimistic about the doubling because I think rook d1, let's say, puts a stop to all my fun down the file. But I'm glad he's thinking right now because I'm using this time to ponder myself. Maybe I can make a case for a3, knight a4, knight takes a4, and then pawn takes a4. Trying to claim that the b pawn will be a perma weakness, and then maybe I can shift over to the b file, which is going to be a half open file for me. Okay, white does play a3. And I don't think this idea is that good anymore. Some plan of f5 and trying to insert a trade on c3 and planting a knight on e4 looks pretty good too. I could play a patient move here. I could just wait and see what white does, but I think they will play their rook over. So I'm leaning knight a4. Maybe pawn b4 as well. Or rook b8 rather, trying to get pawn b4 in. I just don't know if tactically it works out. There's also this and knight a4, but I always think rook e3 is fine. I mean, maybe I can bring this back. Not seeing it though. f5 would be tempting too, if not for losing the pawn on e7. Okay, knight a4 it is. Let's play it. Doing okay on the clock. Wish I had maybe a minute or two more, but it's all right. Yeah, now I'm thinking pawn takes. Although, if I play rook takes, that's nice in terms of attacking this pawn in the future, as I was talking about. I'm going to stick with pawn takes. So this is the target now. But I have created isolated pawns, so my once proud pawn chain, it's weakening a little bit. Basically, I'm hoping that this is a bigger weakness than a4. And if I can induce white to play c3, this is clearly a weakness. Maybe white will adopt some super defensive position where they play c3, rook d1, bishop c1, and just hope to defend that pawn on b2 at all times. But then the bishop will be tied down, and I hope to activate this later on. Maybe with an eventual f5 move. We'll find out. All right, so likely endgame grind coming up here, guys. It's a tough call for white, whether they should play this or not. Because let's say they play rook a b1. Yeah, white does just play it. And do I want the bishop on this diagonal or over here? Probably want to avoid a trade of bishops. So I think I'm going to step back here. Okay, yeah, I think white's going to go for what I was mentioning. So let's play this to start. Make white go passive, bishop c1. And now try to go to work against their weaknesses. Maybe rook b5. It's a good move to begin with here. Stopping e5. And I think this f5 move would be a nice one to achieve. But again, I'm constantly dealing with this issue of the pawn on e7. So maybe rook e8. Yeah, let's try that. Rook e8, plan of f5. Notice the rook on b5 is helping control this square, as I was mentioning. Also, my bishop controls d4, so white can't play rook d4 and go after this guy. Ah, new issue. f5, if take, there's rook takes d6. Sneaky, sneaky. If f5 take, I could take with the rook. Not quite what I want, though. Let's play king f8. Overprotection. Okay, and now I'm going to play this move. I've laid the groundwork. Time to play this. So I'm essentially trying to use my pawn majority, in a way. Even though it's equal material, I consider this to be a bit of a dead structure for white. If white ever plays c4, it's going to further weaken b2, as my bishop gains influence. These pawns can't really move. So, trying to activate these guys. Okay, rook e2, white bides their time. Okay, I'm going to bring up my king ever so slightly. Maybe h5 is another move I should consider soon, just trying to grab more space. I think I do like that. Let's play it. Not rushing any release of the tension here. I think it's fine. I've got e7 backed up. If white takes, the plan is still to take with a pawn. I'd love to continue influencing the e4 square so I never have to worry about this. I fully admit here, though, that white might be able to hold this for a draw with perfect play. So I don't know that I'm necessarily better. Okay, so g4. White's forcing the action a little. Interesting. Yeah, might be decent. If I take twice, I can swing my rook over to h5, perhaps. That would be an active way of playing this position. I could also swing the rook over to h8 for that matter. That might be even better. Let's do that. Okay, so I just mentioned that I wanted to keep a pawn on e4, but I think the h-file presents a pretty compelling avenue for counterplay, so I'm going to send this rook over. Could have played either rook over, but why don't we keep this one trained on the b pawn? Since, yeah, now this rook on e8 doesn't look like it was doing very much, so. What to attack now, though? Maybe I double and try to attack the white king. Maybe bishop f6 somewhere soon. We have an isolated pawn here now. But for this activity, I think I'm willing to make that concession. Okay, we're going to be approaching some severe time pressure soon. There is that 5-second increment. This is a nice position to have increment in for me because I feel like I can make a lot of quick moves here that are non-committal. So if I need to squeeze my opponent, as I very well might have to, then I can do that and try to build up a time reserve. This I do not think is a good move for white because that f5 pawn will be very weak after I trade. I think I will. I think I'm going to take and then put this bishop here. Just thinking for a moment if there's anything more direct to do, but no, let's do that. So check. And I think I like the bishop coming here. I could also put it on e5. But the bishop's real sturdy on this square. Do I have to worry about bishop g5, rook g8, take on e7? It's a shot at counterplay. Probably bad, though, for white. So let's play this. I was briefly calculating this line, but I don't think that's going to be good. They'd have to go for rook takes e7 there. Take, check. King f8. Seems bad, but maybe. So next, I'd love to play rook h4 because that would force white's king away from the pawn. Wow, white does go for this. All right. So interesting. Do I want to go for this and allow this counterplay? Maybe white has calculated this. To be fair, given the position white's working with, this might not be a terrible option for them. Okay. I think I'm going to play this move just for sake of time. I don't want to sit here and burn another minute calculating rook g8 and the consequences of that rook takes e7 move. White's going to gain some activity if I do that, but I don't think I need to relinquish my my grip on the position, let's say. But kudos to my opponent. He's finding some good counterplay here. This is a fun game. I didn't like trading as well. I would still have to contend with the rook takes e7 threat after that, so. The bishop on g5 is kind of nice, though. I can still try for rook g8, although white might sidestep. The king is kind of suspect, though, on g4, so it's double-edged. White's burning a lot of time here. Plays bishop f4. Okay, so now I can go check if I want. King f3 and then come back. I think that would be good to win the pawn. Maybe there's king f5. Let's check. I wonder if white will play bishop g5. No, white does not. Okay, so now I can go here. Yeah, let's play that. Threaten rook takes f5. If king e4, maybe rook g4. Or I can take the file again. Rook h8, but I think rook g4. d5 check blocks my rook from attacking, so yeah, I feel a little bit better about this move. Goes back, okay. Let's go here now. Rook takes f5 as the threat. Okay, now if I take, white's taking everything on e7, I take f4 at the very end. That's not a problem then. So I think I can pick this pawn off. Yeah. All right, so one pawn down. And the king might be in a bad spot. Okay, white puts himself almost in a pin here. But b5 is loose. Okay, let's go here. Looking at this. Okay. Let's take. Have to go passive with the rook temporarily to defend this pawn. But now I got this extra pawn, and these guys are going to start mobilizing. E5, D5, moves like that. If rook C4, I'll just play C5. Maybe start with D5. Let's start with C5, actually. Change my mind. I'm going to try to stop white from playing rook B4. Okay, now I'm going to go D5. Trying to take away squares from the rook. Let's bring this rook back at this point. Don't have to have it assigned to defending here. Maybe look for play this way. Okay, check. This is mate, so white has to go back. Okay. Let's bring up my king. Thought about this. Didn't think I was quite ready for it, though. Due to bishop e3. So just want my king a little bit closer. Might play d4 soon. Yeah, d4 now is a pretty decent looking option. Maybe I can massage this a little more, though. Yeah. Let's not rush it. Let's play e5. Get everything nice and connected here. It's a cardinal rule of the endgame, guys. Don't rush. I love the band rush, but in the endgame, do not rush. Sorry to get elite. All right, let's check. Making progress here. King f4, bishop e5. King's going to have to go back to the second rank probably soon. Yeah. Let's go here. Connected pawns. All right. And this structure's still dead for white. Inaccessible. Now, in advancing these guys, I want to look for a moment to play it on a light square. So, okay, if I check here, white slots in. So maybe bring up the king first. Or maybe bishop e5 first. Let's play bishop e5. I like this. Hit the rook. King d5, king comes up nicely, and now I'm looking for check on the second rank. Force white to defend with king d1 or king e1. Okay, I think due to the pin situation, now that I'm looking to advance, I want to play e3 because d3 is going to allow bishop c3. So let's play this one forward. A lot of times, though, you want to do the opposite, so it complements your bishop. All right. Let's go here. This pawn, I think I can take whenever I want, so I'm not going to capture it yet. Get the king nice and snug in here. Now we're looking at check. Bishop e1, bishop here. So that's probably going to force him to go passive. Let's take this now. All right, and this is checkmate. All right. Thanks to KamrulHasanMilton for the game. This is just a random opponent that I searched in the open challenges on chess.com. Tell him good game. I'll also send him a link to this when I post it. Yeah, a battle. 63 moves. And I had a feeling it wouldn't be easy to win. And as I alluded to, I mean, it might very well be a draw with best play. I think I let some advantage slip round about here, let's say. Maybe around the time that I castled. Because I felt like I should come away with a pawn. Maybe bishop takes c3, followed by rook a4 was best here. That does seem to win a pawn. Take, rook a4. Ah, he does have b4, though. I didn't see that move. Yeah, there's always some sort of defense for white. Now, I think white played a good game. I do think their opening was a little off, and this will be the case. Like, the stronger and stronger opponents that you play, the more the opening does matter. So yeah, bishop e3. It's not the best line here against the classical. If you're looking for a high-quality move, I could recommend bishop g5. This is the Richter-Rauser variation. But bishop e3, inviting knight g4, not the best against this. There are other setups, like against a6 and the Najdorf. Bishop e3 is a main move. Black can still play knight g4 here, but with black having the pressure on the knight on d4 and a quick queen b6 possible to further increase that pressure, it's just hard in the classical. So yeah, I think after this trade and the retreat of the bishop to c1, white kept it together pretty well, but it always felt like black had a bit of an advantage, and I would maybe question this decision to trade queens. If I were playing white, I'd probably play bishop e2 and castle and try to maintain the tension. But yeah, it wasn't played perfectly by me either after this. And I think after a3, black has a slight edge, but white may defend with best play. I think later on, g4 was probably a bit of a mistake, at least on a practical level, because it's hard to contain black's activity here. White's really going to get leaned on. So maybe white should sit tight, play a move like g3 or possibly h4 if they want to close things, or make a waiting move with one of the rooks. I think would be fine too. It's not completely clear what I'm going to do next because I was trying to refrain from playing this capture due to rook takes e4 and that constant annoyance, that constant attack there. So I'm playing these improving moves, just trying to wait for my opponent to overreact, because it's hard for a lot of players to sit there and do nothing, although it can be the correct policy. And also along the lines of g4, I think f5 is a significant mistake for white. I was highly critical of that move when it hit the board. Now, maybe I should play rook g8 here. That was just my default instinct when f5 was played and I was calculating this. But I'm not sure on this one, guys, because rook takes e7, bishop takes e7, rook takes e7. I can't play king takes e7, unfortunately. I'd have to play king f8 here. And it's one of these positions I'm pretty sure the engine's going to say this is just good for black, but white has counterplay. I have to deal with this. This rook is not active. I am attacking b2. I just wasn't quite sure about this line. So I am happy that I went for the other option of just moving the bishop. And actually, if I were white, let's say right here, after rook g8, I think I would have played bishop g5 in this position and more or less dared me to play bishop f6 at some point. There's probably other ways I can try to squeeze my opponent here, but that's a fundamental challenge. So maybe I would play rook b7, trying to threaten this when I have e7 overprotected. But that would be interesting at least. Let's take a quick look at it with the engine. Going to pull up the analysis board here. Okay, this is a long game, so we're not going to analyze it exhaustively, but I'll show you guys the opening explorer here. This is the starting position of the Classical Sicilian. In the open Sicilian, that's when white plays knight f3 followed by d4. It's the open Sicilian. So you can click to the explorer here, and you can see bishop g5. The Richter-Rauser variation is the top move. Bishop c4, bishop e2, also f3 get play. And bishop e3 does get played sometimes, but you can see black scores quite well here. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. And knight g4 in particular gets some nice percentages going for black. Yeah, black scoring well in a number of these lines. I do remember that bishop b5, yeah, is a possibility here. I remember some games in this line. Bishop d7. So white agreeing to double up these pawns, but white does have a development lead here. Black has to be careful. Still should be good, though. So my opponent took on c6. It's been played before. And then bishop back to c1. Queen b6. A lot of people just return the knight here. That's interesting. Yep, g6. We're following some games here. Pair of games to reach this position. Now 3 games. Yeah, and in all 3 games, white preferred that move that I mentioned, bishop e2. Because, yeah, I think queen takes b6 is a slight mistake. Let's throw on the engine here. And I'm only throwing on the engine because we've already talked about this a little bit. I have some conclusions. If I were being really thorough, I would even throw this in like a Lee chess study or annotated or something, and only then add the engine after that. But we've talked through it a little bit. So the engine's showing about a half pawn advantage. It does like bishop e2 is the top move. And after this, we're getting into -1 territory, almost. My knight got kicked back, but that's okay. But yeah, I got to hold my feet to the fire here because I could have played this stage a lot better. Bishop a6. Looks like a very natural move, but the engine doesn't like it as much. It says go ahead and play b5 right away. Yeah, you know, b5 might be good here because a3 in this position doesn't work. I play b4 and the rook is hanging on a1. So yeah, that's probably a good idea. Play b5 before white connects the rooks. White could castle here, but then b4 hits the board, and due to the b2 weakness, white has to play knight b1, like not an attractive move at all. I'd even start thinking about stuff like b3 here. This whole construction is shaky. There's going to be constant pressure on a2. This pawn is hanging, though, so that has to be something I'm aware of. Even this looks really nice. Gorgeous pawn chain for black. 2 bishops. White's minor pieces aren't doing a whole lot. Okay, so bishop a6 was not great by me. Still an edge, though. Pretty significant one, too. Yeah, maybe king e2, as the engine is showing. Keep the king in the center. It could be useful in trying to defend. I think I also mentioned bishop a6, king e2 here. And I think I was considering castles, trying to threaten bishop takes c3, followed by knight takes e4. So let's just play a passing move for white. That would be the idea. Use the pin. Okay, rook fe1. And now I went bishop d4 check, so my bishop wouldn't get shut out if white plays this. Move's not bad. Knight e6 is also a possibility. King h1 is the top move. Okay. Yeah, they all look pretty similar. King h1, king f1, king h2. And now e5 is what the engine wants to do. Okay, yeah, I could understand that move. Puts the brakes on any e5 plan for white in the future, that's for sure. Also gives this line, rook fa8, a3, and then e5. Yeah, if I ever want to play bishop takes c3 and target the e-pawn in the future, that would be helpful. All right, I'm picking up some ideas here. And what does it say about this line that I originally thought of right after I played b5? Yeah, b4 is the answer here. Stopping any shenanigans against the pawn. And again, advantage for black, but a long ways to go. This structure is kind of an awkward one for white to work with when I have the A file in particular. That A pawn is always weak. So b5, a3. It still says e5. You know that's a move to pay attention to when the engine, for multiple moves in a row, wants you to play it. Yeah, knight a4. I think this is just not great. Okay. Does like b pawn takes. Yeah. I do think this is a position, just looking at the way that the engine eval's trending and my own experience in positions like this, I think it's a draw with best play. But white's going to have to suffer a long time. I actually do like playing those positions for the side who's administering the suffering, but I could have done better. So, again, just thinking about self-improvement things, takeaways for you guys too in your own games. Try to target like an area of the game, if you have an inkling of where that may be, where you could improve, and really target your analysis there. And for me, I think it was about moves 15 through 20. That 5-move range was critical in how the game shaped up. And I probably gave about a pawn or a pawn and a half advantage away there. Okay. Likes these moves. Yeah, rook e8, it approves of. Again, I'm just trying to mobilize my pawns here, guys. But there's all these tactical issues. I mentioned if I play f5 here, take. Oops, rook takes d6, and that's a pretty big pawn to have lost. I can't take back, or if I do take back, I lose the rook. So gotta watch those tactics, even in slower positions. So king f8, over protection. And let's see if what I was saying is correct. Ooh, doesn't like f5 here. Instantly goes to zeros straight across after that move. Oof. Wants white to take and play g4. Okay, this might be a horizon thing because we're now in strategic territory. A lot of maneuvering going on. Yeah, I would definitely still take black here, but I could see how the advantage isn't as great as it was before. Not sure the engine's suggesting much of a sensible plan, though. Rook a8, king e8, rook a b8, h6. A lot of disconnected moves here. Okay, but white waited instead. Doubled. Ooh, d5. That move didn't even cross my mind at this point. Some sort of transformation of the structure. Maybe eventually get a past d-pawn. Okay. That's one way to try to force white to do something with this e-pawn. Either take or push. If push, yeah, I'd probably start trying to get this bishop out elsewhere. And again, maybe in the future, something like this. By the way, this isn't engaging my fan very much. Those of you who watch my Twitch streams will know that my fan goes absolutely crazy when I load Stockfish, but it's a nice low hum right now. Hopefully that keeps up. Yeah, in g4, I was pretty critical of this. It actually is the second best move according to the engine. So that must mean it likes h5. h5 is up there. All right, along with d5, rook b3. Yeah, it's a tough position to play for white. So maybe I'm being overly critical, but this just felt like it was giving me play that if the position remained closed, white wouldn't have to worry about. But the advantage is not that great anymore. e5 now is the best move. Okay, trying to block my bishop. And again, we're back to equality here. Take, rook h5. I'd probably play something like king e6. But this pawn is weak too. And there's rook e4 making an appearance, going after this pawn. Okay, but f5 was a mistake for sure. Yeah, f5. Now we're back to -1 territory. And now let's see what the computer thinks about rook g8 here. Okay, rook g8 is not up there. Rook takes e7. This is the line I was giving. Only a slight edge for black. Rook d7 is the best move. That's only a quarter pawn. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go for this line. Also says I can take and then c4. Interesting. Hit the rook. What if just king takes g5? e5, the engine loves. Whoa, look at that move. e5. Huh. That is a sick idea. I don't know if I've ever seen a pin like that. He cannot take me en passant because of my rook. I want to illustrate that, but I legally can't. Whew. And is the idea that white's king is in an awkward position? I can go rook b8, rook g8. That's the mate threat. Controlling these files with the e-pawn controlling this. This pawn's probably very likely going to drop off. Wow, that is sweet. Love it. Chess is a beautiful game, guys. Never stop playing. I've been playing competitively for well over 20 years now. And, well, not well over. No, yeah, definitely well over. I'm 34, so started playing when I was 8. So might have to revise that figure upwards. But I'm still learning stuff all the time and appreciating the beauty of this game every day. Well, if I would have seen that e5 idea, I might have played bishop takes g5, but I'm definitely glad I didn't play rook g8. So bishop e5. Yeah, there's just a lot of annoying tactics that white has to contend with here. He could play this. I guess the computer's not impressed. White isn't a pin after all, so rook b to b8. I think I was also mentioning rook b7, trying to go here. This felt like a gradual slide for white after this. I'm pretty happy with how I played this stage. I think I kept the pressure up real nicely. It's not even clear here that I'm threatening anything, but it's just highly uncomfortable. I guess I'm threatening this move, perhaps. He steps back. Maybe I'm threatening rook h4 and then this move. But yeah, you want to be patient, massage the advantage, annoy your opponent. Yeah, here I bagged a pawn. Computer thinks I can play d5 followed by e5. Okay, didn't think about that. d5 to try to get this rook loose. And then e5, this is check. And time pressure, I'm probably not going to go for something like this. We were getting low at this point. Traded a pair of rooks. Okay. Rook a5. I think this is a technical win for black. I'd be pretty surprised if white can hold this. Pawns are marching. Getting my rook back in play. King up. Thought about playing d4 here, but there's no rush. If d4, I guess it makes it a little bit more likely white can blockade in some capacity. You know, the king gets access to e4. He can try to temporarily frustrate me from playing e5. So why rush? Yeah, and I think here I would have tried bishop h2 if I were white to keep the pawn on e5 pin, but those pawns are coming eventually. Yeah, I guess I could have played e4 in this position. That's fine. Yeah, you can see it's only a one pawn deficit for white still, but the advantage has gone all the way up to -4 or more for black. These pawns are mobilized, and white is just not able to do anything with their pawns. Okay. You just got to avoid tricks. Be alert here. You know, don't needlessly go for stuff like this. d3 allowing white to capitalize on the pin. That might be a way to lose the game. Work the king in. And got a mate. And even if white saw the threat, something like king c1, yeah, their days are numbered here. These pawns are going to decide the issue soon. All right, so highly entertaining game. Got an advantage out of the opening. My opponent defended resourcefully and really showed a lot of tenacity and time pressure against an IM. So kudos to Kamrul once again. Hope you guys learned something from this game. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. This is Climbing the Rating Ladder, and I'll be back again soon with another video, guys. See you later.